The last place I wanted to be was Frostnipistan.
This one's wife. Who will expose who? Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. In the narcissistic dynamic between the intimate partner primary source and a narcissist, there are three outcomes. The victim might escape, the narcissist may disengage, or neither of those things happen, and there is the rollercoaster relationship of devaluation and respite period that goes on until one of the parties dies. It's usually the case, although not always, that the relationship between narcissist and victim will be brought to a conclusion. With regard to this one's wife and Harry, the most likely outcome is that the relationship will end rather than endure. As a consequence of the demise of the relationship, the question of exposure raises its head. Why is this relevant? Well, when any relationship ends, there is an element of one party perhaps feeling more aggrieved than the other. Nevertheless, both parties are likely to feel aggrieved. The individual who's decided to end the relationship may well have done so because they have concerns about the behaviour of the other person. Thus, they share those concerns with close friends and family members. The person who has been told the relationship is over may also feel aggrieved as a consequence of that being done to them. They may also have had reservations about the behaviour of their partner, or, if they didn't, that they feel aggrieved because they gave so much to the relationship and now it's ended. They similarly may well speak to friends and family members. But what they don't tend to do is go and embark upon a campaign of exposure, seeking to tell lots of people, sometimes anybody who will listen, as to the behaviour of the individual. Some people maintain a dignified silence, keeping their own counsel. Others simply talk to those that they're very close to and don't broadcast it at large, wanting to perhaps take into account the consideration of the feelings of others, particularly children. But it's a different set of considerations that are applicable when you throw a narcissist into the mix, because of two driving factors. The first, from the victim's point of view, is that they may well feel that they want to expose the behaviours of the narcissist to let the world know what an awful person they are. It's not so much about protesting their innocence, although that sometimes is applicable, but rather wanting that person's behaviour to be exposed so that the world knows what the victim had to endure, and also for the purposes of potentially warning other people about this individual. The other driver is from the narcissist perspective, whereby they engage in smearing, although the unaware narcissist doesn't realise that's what they're doing, because they believe that the victim has caused them a problem and that they need to be exposed for the lies that they are telling about the narcissist. Thus, exposure by victim and or narcissist is a likely event following the demise of a relationship between the two. How might that pan out with regard to Harry and this one's wife? Who is more likely to expose the other? There's no doubting that both parties have got some skeletons in the cupboard. Indeed, as I mentioned last week, even though it was a parody, it was done on the basis of demonstrating many of the things that this one's wife is engaged in that are problematic for her. There will be behaviours on both sides which are problematic. This one's wife has subjected Harry to a sustained devaluation. He's been shouted at, insulted, given silent treatments, subjected to ridiculous demands, pity plays, perhaps his sleep being deprived, possibly even cheated on, and maybe even physical violence. a whole range of problems. The way that she'll have spoken about his family and friends, the way that she's kept him from those family and friends, the way that she's ordered him about, the way that she's used his money. He will have much to expose in relation to how she has behaved. Harry, of course, is no saint. He will have argued back. He will have had a sulk. He will have thrown a tantrum. The drivers for his behaviour will be different. He might have been pushed so far that he's grabbed hold of her. He might have sought to defend himself as a consequence of a physical attack, which she will interpret into him attacking her. There will be things that Harry has done, drinking, his drug taking, which actually took place, and there'll be other things which he won't have done, which this one's wife's narcissism will fabricate. Thus, on either side, there will be a list of behaviours that would be described as unpleasant in relation to how both of them have behaved. However, there are different drivers behind why they behaved as they have. The likely scenario in relation to the demise of this relationship is that she will end it. And that means that Harry will be upset following the demise of the relationship because, still ensconced within his own emotional thinking, he would want to preserve the family unit. He would want it to endure. He also wouldn't want to admit that there's been a failure. But if she ends it, he has no choice but to ultimately accept that. And undoubtedly, he would then be focused on securing the exit, dealing with matters with regard to the children, to the extent you accept they exist, and sorting out finances. This is a problem for Harry because it means that he will stay on her radar as all of these things are thrashed out. Initially, Harry isn't going to expose her. He will want to get this sorted out as promptly as possible. He will also be placed under considerable pressure by other members of the royal family to get the job done as quietly and discreetly as possible. Furthermore, he also wouldn't want to expose her because of concerns vis-à-vis the children and the fact that he still loves her. However, owing to the fact that he remains on her radar and they will clash in the divorce in relation to her demands surrounding property, assets, money, and the children, this means that he will undoubtedly threaten her control. She's not going to be able to assert control over him directly. She may well try, for instance, circumventing lawyers, calling him up and saying, "Why are you being so ridiculous about the amount of spousal maintenance that you're offering?" But there'll come a point where he will stop taking her calls or will just simply say, "It's in the hands of the lawyers. You've got to stop calling me." Thus, her attempts to assert control over him directly will fail. She might even go to see him, but it will get her nowhere because he'll simply say, "I'm not discussing it with you. You need to put this through the lawyers. That's what they're there for." Thus, because there are things that they need to sort out, he will keep coming up on the radar. That means he has to be controlled, and the starting point is to control him directly. That will not work. Therefore, because her narcissism demands that control is obtained, it will cause her to move to the second assertion of control, which is indirect, which means she will smear him. She will complain about him to those around her, those in her coterie, Doria, the few friends that she actually has who are really just hangers-on, and most likely those that are there in a professional capacity. But what she will do is then seek, as she always has done, to leak this information more widely, to curry public sympathy, in order to paint Harry as Harry the Bastard. She will use Doria in that smearing as a lieutenant. She may well utilise the likes of Meghan Harriman to claim that he witnessed certain behaviours. She will use pictures and footage that have been accumulated during the sustained devaluation, or perhaps where Harry has fought back, where Harry has lost his temper, where Harry is asleep in the middle of the afternoon, where Harry is spliffed out of his brains. The photos will have just been taken at the time as a simple record of what was going on. But her narcissism, maybe years later, when it needs to assert control over Harry indirectly, will essentially think, What have we got in our box of tricks that can paint him in a bad light? Oh yes, we've got some photographs on the phone still, showing him shouting, showing him throwing a plate through the air. We've got some video footage of him ignoring Archie and storming off, slamming doors. Let's all dredge all of that up and paint the picture of him as a horrible husband and a terrible father. She will also make alongside all of that allegations that he is a poor father. After all, she's done it to her own father, so it's quite simple to do it in respect of him. She may even allege that Harry's been unfaithful, her paranoia concocting the idea that he has been playing the pink oboe elsewhere. She will undoubtedly allege that he has abused her. That is a standard go-to with regard to the victimhood of the narcissist, and she, as a cowardly mid-ranger, even though she is the abuser, will claim that he has. She'll claim, he's 6'2", a strapping bloke, I'm only little. 5'6". And thus she will portray this image of him being the aggressor. She will expose these behaviours and cause them to be portrayed in a way that makes Harry look like the abuser in order to gain sympathy, because that will provide her with a sense of subconscious control over Harry. Thus, it is done for one of the prime aims. Furthermore, such exposure may well result in her receiving money as a consequence of the stories that she tells, and if she can actually get her lazy finger out, that she will write about it also in some concocted memoirs in order to make money, another residual benefit. Harry might fight back and expose her behaviours, but there's no guarantee that he necessarily would. What's most likely is she'll be the one that exposes him. As soon as the divorce is on foot, her narcissism will be looking to deal with the threats to control that he poses by not giving her precisely what she wants. She will try and assert directly, that will fail, and therefore it follows, logically, that her narcissism will shunt her to the second assertion of control, which means she will smear Harry, and that means exposing his alleged behaviours. She has no love for him, no compassion for him, no care for him. She has no emotional empathy for Harry. She only has that sense of entitlement to do what she wishes to do, no accountability to rein it in. She doesn't care about the impact upon the children. All that she cares about is what matters for her. And thus, when it comes to exposure, it'll be her that seeks to expose Harry. Whether people accept it and believe it, well, that's another matter altogether. There'll be a healthy dose of scepticism, believe me. But she will be the one that will seek to expose first. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with the observations that I've made? Let me know in the comments section. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.